Centuries of various peoples inhabiting the present-day lands of Ukraine have made their mark on the country's religious landscape. While the majority of Ukrainians declare themselves Orthodox Christians, some of their beliefs have even deeper roots than the rite born in Constantinople back in the Middle Ages. But to what extent is religion present in life of modern Ukrainians? And that's what we'll focus on today. Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and welcome to How We Got Here.
With President Volodymyr Zelenskyy banning all pro-Russian initiatives within Ukraine's Orthodox Church, the war-torn country's religious landscape is as chaotic as ever. While over 70% of Ukrainians consider themselves followers of the Eastern Orthodox Church, that number is fractured into a few different Christian groups. 54% of Ukrainians associate themselves with the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, 14% identify as Orthodox Christians without specifying a church affiliation, 4% follow the Moscow Patriarchate, another 9% of Ukrainians profess devotion to the Catholic Church in Ukraine, and 8% say they are Ukrainian Greek Catholics, while 1% are Latin Catholics. 2% of the population declares affiliation to a mainstream Protestant church, and a further 2% identify with alternative sects of Christianity. However, this wide spectrum of beliefs is nothing compared to the turbulent history of religion in Ukraine. As far back as the Middle Ages, different tribes that occupied present-day Ukraine practiced their own pagan religions. Byzantine Christianity also started appearing alongside local beliefs around the turn of the first millennium, culminating in the baptism of Ukraine in 988 CE. This milestone marked the beginning of the long and enduring dominance of Eastern Orthodoxy in Ukraine. Despite this ascendancy, a variety of other religions managed to find a foothold in Ukraine over the ages. Islam, brought to the country by the Golden Horde and the Ottoman Empire between the 13th and 15th centuries, was adopted by Crimean Tatars and remains the ethnic group's official religion to this day. Judaism has existed in Ukraine for the last 2,000 years, but took on a completely new identity in the 18th century, transforming into what we today refer to as Hasidic Judaism, adding even more variety into the already diverse religious landscape of Ukraine.
Our guest today is Michał Klinger, Orthodox theologian, lecturer, and former diplomat. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
So the Easter season is upon us, and although Ukrainians celebrated Christmas last year, like the Catholic counterparts, it's not the case with spring celebration. Why so?
Some small, let's say, not correction, but enlargement of your statement. Majority of Orthodox churches are also using the reformed or more accurate calendar. This reform of calendar, which in the West was made in late 16th century and not accepted very quickly everywhere, yes? But anyway, in the Orthodox churches and nations, states, were done in early 20th century.
I see.
So, for instance, Polish Orthodox Church officially changed the calendar also for this more accurate calendar called in West Gregorian one. Yes, the calendar reformed or repaired in the Eastern countries is more accurate even than the Gregorian one. They are running together now, but for instance, in year, I think, 2200, it will be a different of one day. Because you see, calendar is always functioning, adding or not adding one day a year. Yeah? So this formula, which year has more one day, it is a calendar. It's a question of calendar. So that's the so-called Neo-Julian calendar in the Eastern country. And the Ukrainian nation and church joined the this group of Orthodox nations, majority of them, having already reformed calendar.
I see. Because I thought that the last Christmas being celebrated the very same time with Catholics was, well, basically politically...
I'm also celebrating the Christmas feast together in the same day.
I agree, but when it comes to Ukraine, I just thought it was politically motivated because of the Russian invasion of the country.
Yes, you are right. Because why now? We can ask. Why now? Yes, now it is because Ukrainian population and intellectuals and leaders, they look to diminish or even delete all kind of affinities with the former Moscow or Russian domination, which is here very visible because which churches in the Orthodox world were not accepting this reform of calendar in 20s. It was the Russian Orthodox Church. And in the Soviet Union, all these churches together, they had all the time this old Julian calendar. So now, it is a part of Occidentalization of Ukraine, part of modernization of Ukraine. And of course, in that case, you are right, absolutely, that it is one of the many other signs, between many other signs.
But would you say that there is a schisma between the Russian and the Ukrainian church?
Yes, but it is not the question of calendar, but it is the question of formal power, which Ukrainian Church denied in 2022, so few months after the war. Before, few years before, it was a big part of Ukrainian Orthodox Church establishing the new independent Ukrainian autocephalian, so-called autocephalian church.
That means self-governing.
Autocephaly is a Greek word which expresses what we say, what we call sovereignty. So
right, self-governing, of course.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But a big part that time, it was 2018, big part of the Orthodox believers, they did not accept this establishing of the new church in Ukraine, and they felt that time still related to Moscow. But when war appeared, this terrible war, every Orthodox bishop and community started to feel necessity to cut the relations with Patriarch of Moscow and cut this independence. And we have now two churches in Ukraine, two Orthodox churches. One is this autocephalian created before the war, and second is the church which separated herself from Moscow in 22, but they still not joined. So we have two churches in Ukraine which are in the struggle about some properties. You see, that's difficult all the time.
But would you agree with me that Putin, by starting this war, has lost any sort of religious influence over Ukraine?
Absolutely, you are right. That is the, I think, unconscious but also not expected result which Putin really received from that war. The Ukrainian nation is united around their own nationality. The people were speaking Russian, now speak only Ukrainian. Yes? Church, it was church, let's say, with some special sentiment toward Moscow. started in the 19th century, but now also separated from Moscow, and it is irreparable. It couldn't be changed after the war, if we hope, of course, that the war one day will end.
So we have schism and the vast majority of Ukrainians.
But schism with Moscow.
Yes.
But it's a process of integration inside Ukraine, which is difficult. I agree.
I'd like to ask you, how religious exactly are Ukrainians nowadays? Because, well, as we can observe it in Poland, most of the people celebrate major holidays, but they don't attend masses.
Yeah.
What's the case with Ukraine?
Another very important and interesting question. You see that in the former Soviet Union, we had a massive secularization, atheization of the society, and Ukrainian society was inside in that process, of course. But, and for instance, a result is that we say sometimes, even if the religious statistics are not very exact and present now, that 1 to 3% only in Russian territory is actually practically experiencing the church tradition and offered, let's say. In Ukraine is much more. We are hearing about 20-something toward even to 40% in Ukraine. These believers actively in the Western sociology of religion, we call it Dominicantes. So the people are going every Dominica, every Sunday to church. Yes. Maybe they are not going every Sunday to church, especially now where they have really real tragedies around. But they are very much related to church support, spiritual support, which is so this 20, even to 40% is something what is only the dream in Russian, for instance, territory.
Because on one hand, we have the situation where people are at war, right? And they need some spiritual guidance. Then on the other hand, Ukraine is tending to westernize its citizens. And we know that the West is very much secularized for the past, 2 centuries.
Not everywhere, but...
Right.
There are some reciprocal movements back, but I would underline that phenomenon of being confronted by all this population with something final, something metaphysical. Because if your family are confronted with the threat of death, any moment, any day, but any moment, then religious question is much different. And I think it is this impact which is not present in other societies, and it shows that the church policy, let us say, to present some ideology, for instance, national ideology, nationalistic ideology, historical ideology, is rather being close to failure. But the real commitment with the existential dramas of everyday life of people, what is the real convocation for church? To serve, to help people in the final situation, extreme situation. That is the real let's say, recipe how really to revitalize the church, and Ukrainian church is revitalizing.
I absolutely agree with you. Nevertheless, I'd rather wish that Ukrainians could celebrate their holidays in peace. And that is something, whether believer or non-believer, to pray for.
Thank you, of course.
Michał Klinger, Orthodox theologian, lecturer, and former diplomat, was our guest today. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. That's all we've prepared in this episode of How We Got Here, and see you next time.